block for this big slate of games we have in front of us. I'm Chris Spags, joined by my pal, my buddy I get to spend a little church time with on Sunday, the Chubster Josh Engelman. How you doing, Josh?
I'm pretty good. I've been pumped for this week all week. So I don't know what's happened, but I wanted no part of NFL through, I don't know, all of the offseason up until Saturday of last week, and now I can't get enough.
Yeah, there are some nice prices for this week, and of course, we will talk about that throughout the hour. And I think one thing that contributes to my enthusiasm for the NFL, and that is knowing that there is a safe haven for a rake-free daily fantasy out there, and that safe haven is Fantasydraft. So thanks to them for sponsoring the show, first of all, and so many of the shows on this channel. But of course, Fantasydraft is the only rake-free daily fantasy site in the business. Now they're partnering with Hooters, America's favorite wing and boob dispensary, for the largest guaranteed rake-free contest lineup in the history of daily fantasy sports. Only on Fantasydraft are 100% of entry fees paid to contest winners. So sign up at fantasydraft.com right now and use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, for your free 7-day trial and your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. And Josh, I know you're playing a lot on some of the sites today that have no management fees, no rake. How does rake affect your life as a guy who's done well and banked some tournaments in your day?
It should be everything. I made a conscious decision to play the majority of my volume on our sponsor, Fantasydraft, because there's no rake, and the big contest is looking like it's going to overlay. There are some other spots in the industry today that are also looking like overlay with no fees. So I think it's really the only option. I'm trying to play as much as I can there.
Yeah, it's okay. Great way to build your bankroll, obviously, and also just to not burn bankroll. I think that's something that we don't realize is how much as we play on all these sites. Even if you're winning or you're losing, you are losing a lot of money to rake to each place. So Fantasy Draft, not a place where that's going to occur. Let's go check them out right now at fantasydraft.com and use that promo code AWESEMO. And also, we did just get an ownership update. So if you want to get that data for yourself, a very important part of NFL DFS, go to awesemo.com/join and check out all the packages we have there. Use the promo code live before lock. You'll get half off your first month. But also we have new weekly packages, which include some grades and all the other information you need if you're just a casual player trying to turn some lineups into money. Go check that out right now at awesemo.com/join, because we have packages that are about $3.95 a week, as low as $3.95 a week. That is a very affordable price for you to get in there if you're just trying to get some little data for yourself. All right, let me get this ownership in here because that just came through. Make sure nothing weird happened.
Yeah, I'm going to have to dive into that in, I don't know, whenever I finish these last couple Yahoo lineups.
Yahoo, the fun of hand entering lineups, which I do anyway, because I still enjoy that process. For NFL especially, I feel like I'll use the crunches to kind of get where I want to go, but the hand building I do think gives you a bit of a fine tune. And on Yahoo, that is just the life. You just get
it's hand entry. I didn't hand build any bit of this.
Right. Well, same thing to me. You're clicking. You gotta work out those forearms, those fingers.
I've got 2 to go, and then I can get back to the CSV entry stuff.
So let's talk about the ownership game here a little bit, because I don't think we should go position by position, because I do think there is one team here who is really going to be not over-owned, but certainly owned. The Oakland Raiders here.
Miami Dolphins.
You know what? You could make a case there, but they're not going to be owned.
I can't make that case.
I would like to hear that case momentarily.
Whoa, hold on. I said I can't make that case.
Oh, you said you could.
No, I cannot.
You could make a case for going to like Devontae Parker and like just hoping, because I mean Fitzpatrick was still gunning it, even though he was, they were in a dire straits last week. They're going to be in dire straits again, so one would think they're going to throw.
I would rather listen to Dire Straits.
well, yeah, that does seem like your kind of music.
Love Struck Romeo.
Let's talk about Oakland, because I'm not as much on the Oakland chalk. I do have a good amount of Waller. I am less into Josh Jacobs. I think the game script really did favor him last week. I find it hard to believe he's going to get as many touches. He did, and he also didn't run a ton of routes. He only ran 12 routes as a receiver. I'm not dying to get to this Oakland chalk, especially just how owned they are in some spots I like a bit more, which we'll talk about throughout this hour. How are you feeling about Oakland? Because they are owned out the old wazoo.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I don't really see how you avoid it in large amounts. As I mentioned, so I'm not playing at all on Draftkings. It's Fantasydraft, Yahoo, and then Fanduel for me today. So Fantasydraft, I guess, is probably my best explanation of 1-to-1 for DK, but they're just too cheap. It's really hard for me to not have at least 15 to 20% of both Waller and Williams. And then for Jacobs, again, I want to have these guys, but I'm not going too crazy. I'm much crazier on the Kansas City side than I am on the on the Raiders side, but it just feels like a really appealing game. And if it stays close, which I don't think is like some outlandish proposition, am I crazy to think that that game can be functional?
I mean, being in Oakland too, they certainly are a team who gets a lot from that home crowd. Bizarrely, that home crowd's still really showing up big, even though they're moving and they've had all these weird drama things with the stadium and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. It helps them out quite a bit. And they were very feisty. I mean, that could just be to the emotional high of the losing Antonio Brown and coming out and having the whole the Bill Simmons Ewing theory component of that in Week 1. And Denver too just really didn't generate much of a rush at all. But also, this Kansas City team, not really good at generating a rush. They did fall off a cliff according to their PFF grade in pass rush, which is something that I thought was a concern going into the season. Just a 61 graded pass rush for Kansas City. And last year they were pretty good with D Ford out there. Now he's not on that. Now he's not on that Kansas City defense. I don't know. I think it certainly bodes well for Oakland, but I think with that much ownership and this many games, like I just feel like I can go to the Rams. I can go to my Buffalo Bills, my cherished Buffalo Bills. I can go to the Cowboys. I think there's a lot of other teams out there that have similar upside here where like it wouldn't shock me if the Oakland Raiders disappoint you as chalk. That just seems like a bad spot historically.
It would surprise me if they disappointed. I mean, like, it's not as if I'm thinking that all three of those dudes are going to go for 40 or something crazy. But I love the idea of getting to a 7-point underdog at home with a 53 total. I mean, they should run a ton of offensive plays. You would think, at least. And at that point in time, I'm hoping that volume just wins out. And at the worst case scenario, they are functionally fine. But I think the ceiling of what's here is really hard to ignore. If this really does go, if this plays like the 53-point total that it is, I'm very, very intrigued by who gets that volume.
Okay. No, I think that's fair. And, Oakland certainly did look feisty. It's really hard to argue how they looked last week, and they did a good job protecting Derek Carr. And Carr himself was very accurate. He completed 85% of his passes against the Denver defense, who, frankly, I thought was going to be good. And logically, it seems like they should have been good with bringing Vic Fangio in there. But I guess for Oakland, which of the three players, the three chalk Raiders, would you be the least inclined to have, or will you have the least of relative to the field?
Waller.
Okay. Any particular reason why?
Because I like Travis Kelce and George Kittle more than him, and eventually he just runs out of places to be in a lineup.
Okay, that's fair. And yeah, and I think there are some price pivots too. I mean, Delaney Walker, not a guy I'm going to a bunch, but he certainly is somebody in that price range who has been a favorite target of Marcus Mariota. Mark Andrews, a guy I do like quite a bit, and I'm going to have a lot of this week. I think there are some ways to get away from Waller. And his target share did drop as that game went on. I mean, he did have a good load overall. But still, as that went down the stretch, he wasn't getting targeted quite as much. I think he's safe. Like, I think he's a guy who should be able to get some points here. But I think the guys mentioned a tight end like Kelce, Kittle, those guys have much bigger upsides than Waller, I would think.
Look, I mean, we're not even really worried about upside when it comes to Waller. I mean, if you're trying to win the Milli or something, you need everybody to score 25 fantasy points. But Waller's, 3,300 on DraftKings?
Mm-hmm.
You don't, you're just talking about a very different outcome that you need for him than like a normal guy. No matter what you think of this scenario, he's their tight end and he's 3,300 in this game as a 50 plus total. Sometimes it's just that simple.
How about Kansas City on the other side? Because they also have one of the highest implied totals. You mentioned you have some interest in Kelce. He's going to be pretty decently owned. Sorry, what?
Yeah, he's going to be a little bit more than pretty decently owned in the old Josh lineups.
So are you buying into the whole pass stack? Are you going to Watkins? Are you going to have any? I'm not so into the Hardman, Demarcus Robinson group, though those guys did get routes. Both actually had a comparable amount of routes run in Week 1. But I do have some Mahomes. I have some Kelce. I have a good amount of Watkins. Less into the run game. But what are you getting here on the Chiefs?
I have an infinite amount of Mahomes at this point. I have Travis Kelce in 70% of my stuff. I have a ton of Sammy Watkins. I do have some Hardman, but it's essentially only in Chiefs onslaught stacks. He's not some guy that I'm not actually interested in him, but he gets pulled along for the ride a little bit in a couple lineups. Nothing that I would really advocate for. I don't have as much Damian Williams. That's the spot that I'm the lightest. Mm-hmm. Still 15% on Fanduel, but yeah, Kelce and Watkins. Kelce in particular is basically in everything that I'm doing everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, he is the top projected tight end of the week, and he also is not at a terrible price. And the targets were there last week, and certainly the targets will continue to be there because there's no Tyreek Hill, and there's just a lot of offense to go around with these guys. Sammy Watkins, are you buying in here? Because I think his price could stand to be a little higher based on what we saw last week. He had 11 targets. He looked fresh. I mean, he's certainly always a guy who can get banged up, can get hurt, but a 32% target share against an Oakland defense who gotten worse over the week too, with Josh Abrams now out he's on the IR, their rookie DB who's pretty feisty out there. How are you feeling about Watkins? And again, another chalky play.
Yeah, I don't know how you can't be a believer in Watkins here. If you don't think that Sammy Watkins is going to have a decent game today, you must really like the Raiders, I guess. It's got to come from somewhere. I'll take their number one wideout for sure. So I've got like 35% of them on Fanduel as of right now. I find it really hard to get away from these guys. Who's going to soak up this stuff? I'd be shocked if one of Kelsey and Watkins don't have just a monster day, or at least have the potential for it. Tons of targets and such.
Yeah, I mean, the team looked really good last week. It's hard to say if that Jacksonville defense is just atrocious now, if they've completely fallen off of a cliff, or if that's just Kansas City being great. But I think all the concerns about Mahomes' regression, he certainly didn't show any of it in week one. He was great in every possible situation, great under pressure, great on deep throws, great when in a clean pocket. Everything you want to see out of him looks good, and he's certainly going to be able to deliver the ball to these guys.
I want to touch on something that Alex just tweeted. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. He said, Alex's most recent tweet, overlay will be huge on Fantasydraft and Yahoo. Fantasydraft is at 26 of 40,000, Yahoo at 34 of 50. If you're not in those, you must hate money. He is absolutely right. If you're playing somewhere else today and not on one of those two sites, you just probably need to listen to a different show, because you're clearly not listening to us.
Boy, you're drawing that line in the sand early on a Sunday.
I mean, if the goal of watching this show is to make yourself more money, then you are step one. You're like, I'm going to go to a different step. Step one should be playing in the best contest. Those are the best contests, and they're overlaying. You're already like 12% to the good by getting in it if it fills to the brim. They're going to come 20% short. The moment that Yahoo, let's just say Yahoo, for example, the moment Yahoo locks, when it says entry fee $20, currently winning, it's going to say like 30 instead of 17 or whatever the rake would have been the opposite way. You are throwing money in the garbage if you're not doing this. Unless you live in Florida and can't play Yahoo. Well, congratulations, Will. You can now play Yahoo in Florida. You missed the memo, so get to it, Will.
Yeah, that's right. Where it was Florida and Canada now available, except Quebec. So sorry to our French Canadian YouTube watchers out there, but Yahoo is now live in Florida and Canada.
If Yahoo doesn't work for you, then go to Fantasydraft and play in that contest. It's the same message for either one of them. Just play as much money as you can in places where they're giving you free money.
Yeah, free money tends to be a positive, I'm going to say, in DFS. I'll go out on that limb.
Yeah, it's I don't know. You should listen to nothing else in this show other than just entering the correct contests on these days. It's free. It's absolutely free money. It's like a 401k match for your company, which most people do wrong as well. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised.
You're just giving out all the you want to do a personal finance podcast?
I could do that. That is my background at the very least.
That could be the segue that we make here. A little spin-off, Osmo Finance. I think that's
God, yeah.
That's how you spend your DFS winnings in the right way.
I'd be better at that than DFS.
Well, maybe you are running a little cold in MLB, I guess. That's what I was hearing with you and Jake the other day.
I'm up, but I mean, I didn't go to DFS school for 6 years.
What if you did? What a degree that would be.
It would actually be valuable instead of the actual degree that I got, which is completely worthless.
Yeah, you're telling me, Mister, I am a public relations degree with a minor in theater. Neither. Well, I guess maybe you could say I have some theatrical layers that I'm bringing to the show. But yeah, really a fucking waste of money.
Yeah.
College, good times. Any interest at all in LaShawn McCoy? Because he does jump out to me as a price point pivot to Josh Jacobs, and he has looked good on the run. The volume wasn't there from in week one. It still should continue to be heavily for Damian Williams. But there are a couple of gifs I saw of like people breaking down his runs, and he really was working the blocks in a way where Damian Williams just doesn't kind of have that skill set yet, at least. Would you have any McCoy at all? Because he's just 1.5% owned. So I'm going to have him in like a smattering of lineups, but not too much.
He's not in my player pool.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Just the 4,700 on DK and Josh Jacobs at 4,700 on DK, and they're in the same game with the high total. It seems interesting to me, but only 11 targets or 11 touches in week 1 for McCoy. But this could trickle up, and he did make the most of them. So just a thought. Let's see. Where else are we getting ownership now? Because I feel like ownership's really concentrated there. Well, let's just talk about my guys here because they do have some ownership on them, and let's get it out of the way because this is what the people tune in for. Buffalo Bills, Josh. How are you feeling about them here? Alex seems to be a little more down on Josh Allen, though he does project well. I think he's closer to the Josh Allen pay window that I've been at, Ben Ross has been at for a while. Also, our boy Evan Silva, big Josh Allen fan. How are you feeling about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills this week in a matchup against the Giants team, who was just hapless last week against the Cowboys?
Not super interested.
You brat bastard.
I don't know. I don't really get the appeal.
Oh man. So okay, here's the appeal for Josh Allen. Throwing it deep a lot. John Brown, a really elite deep ball target. 10 targets in week 1. He converted 7 of those in the catches. This Giants defense got strafed through the air last week, giving up 12.7 yards per pass. I think Singletary is a bit of a stretch maybe because the volume may not be there. They're still saying that Frank Gore is the lead back. But I think John Brown and Josh Allen is one of my preferred stacks on the week. Cole Beasley's ownership has come down, and I think that's reasonable. He's a short target, both literally and in terms of the depth of targets he's getting. But he's still not a guy I'm dying to get to as much. But a 27% target share for John Brown, a deep ball passer. Allen threw it 37 times last week. I think this is a spot where he could blow up, and I'm buying in.
You're team Josh Allen. I'm not team Josh Allen. I have, 10 lineups on Fanduel out of my 150. So it's not as if he's like a flat 0, but I just don't find it highly stackable.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to get a full onslaught going, but I think the thing which you could run it back with the Giants, I think sort of makes it more appealing to me is that Barkley's not going to be, he's owned, but not terribly owned. Same thing for Evan Ingram. I think those guys are going to be the very clear targets here because there's no Sterling Shepard. He's out with a concussion. Cody Latimer is going to be in, but he's a guy who is not that great, and he's going to be covered by Tre'Davious White, so that's a bit of a downgrade for him. I don't know. I don't find there to be a way the Giants don't kind of can concentrate their offense between those two guys. So when you have that Allen, Barkley, Ingram, and then John Brown as the wide receiver with Allen, I think that's sort of an appealing stack to me that's not going to have a ton of ownership.
Yeah, I just like you're going to freak out when I just want to play better guys.
You son of a bitch. You know what? History will not look favorably upon those who doubted Josh Allen, but that's fair. Look, we have our takes. I just want to make sure to get it out of there now because Josh Allen is going to be the guy who wins me $1 million this week. I think I'll agree.
It's possible, but John Brown, I think, is just as likely to get 2 fantasy points as he is 25.
He was good last year. I mean, in week 1, he got 3 targets of 20 plus yards. That's certainly a positive thing for what John Brown does. And I just don't believe this Giants defense is that good. They were one of the poorest graded PFF teams according to all their grades, a 40.6 defense grade, a 53 pass rush grade, a 30.1 coverage grade. Those are towards the bottom of the league in all those categories. Certainly they can level out a bit. They should level out a bit. But I think Buffalo really showed me something, I thought, with that game against the Jets last week, coming back, digging deep. And I don't know. I'm intrigued by them this year. And this is the week to me that Josh Allen keeps it going. But we'll see.
You love Josh Allen.
You will rue the day.
I hope he plays well and all. I have a little bit of it, but I'm not confident that the Bills-Giants game will be the offensive juggernaut spot that I need it to be.
Oh, look, I agree, but I think when you have this stack, you can kind of get to some of the other guys who I like quite a bit, like Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Sammy Watkins, some of the guys we talked about on that Chiefs side. I think the prices here kind of work, and they have a ton of upside. And I also, I might be a little biased because week 1, I had some decent lineups, but some of the better ones I had were not like the ones with Mahomes and some of the and Sammy Watkins even. It was ones with Buffalo stacks with Sammy Watkins, so that kind of helped me get some other guys. So I don't know. I think it's a nice price point, and I think now is the time to get on there with the ownership not being too crazy. Though he is getting some respect, which makes me happy as an Allenophile.
Andrew mocked with 75% Josh Allen. I hope that's only 4 lineups, my man.
Hey, he's a savvy player. You can't go to that much Josh Allen. I'll have some Giants defense too, just in case it goes terribly. But still, I'm a believer, and the talent's there. Allen seems way too popular. He's going to be under 10% owned on DK according to our ownership projections. So that is less than a lot of other guys right now, but still decently owned. Who else would you say is your sneak QB then? Because I feel like there are some guys here who aren't very owned. I mean, some guys in the Minnesota Green Bay game. I know Alex is a believer in the Minnesota passing attack, leveling out a bit here. Andy Dalton, pretty low owned, despite throwing over 50 times in week one. Got a lot of guys here who maybe aren't as owned as they should be because a lot of the ownership is going to Mahomes, it looks like. Well, who else are you getting at QB that you feel like is worth addressing?
I was getting a lot of Jimmy G till I started backing. Nah, I walked it back a bit. I've got a bit of Derek Carr. I've got a lot of Dak again. I think that's a pretty decent spot. So him and Cooper and Zeke are a decent part of my plans today. But again, quarterback is a byproduct of what I'm getting at running back, wide receiver, and tight end. I don't particularly care how that comes out.
Yeah, that's fair. Roethlisberger is a guy who I could see you maybe being into, and I think he's an interesting play too because that passing attack does seem. I mean, it seems like they're going to be throwing a lot this year. And Seattle really didn't look great in coverage last week, going against obviously getting strafed by John Ross, maybe not giving up a big game to Tyler Boyd, but still giving up a ton of targets. Any interest in Roethlisberger for you?
I don't have as much as I probably would if I were mentally like building 150 lineups. That's the Manny Laura play today, Ben Roethlisberger. I like it. I have a lot of Juju, so I'm there. I don't have much Connor, and by much I mean any, I believe. So that's sort of limiting me. I'm heavy on Juju. I don't really like the rest of the Steelers. Like I don't like getting to Vance McDonald. Again, as I mentioned, I just like running backs more than Connor. So at that point, it limits the amount of Ben I'm going to get because there are limits to the amount of Juju I can get.
Yeah, I think that whole passing attack, I mean, you have Moncrief and James Washington there. James Washington was an air yard stud in week one, and obviously didn't convert that to anything. But in terms of just getting the opportunity, he was getting targeted deep down the field quite a bit. I'm trying to sort my thing right now. Let me just pull up the stat. Yeah, let me just confirm this. But Washington was targeted, I believe, 4 times deep down the field, which is a lot for him. And the opportunity should keep being there for him, one would think. Yeah, 4 targets of 20-plus yards. The catch rate of 25% on those deep targets, certainly not good, but the opportunity is there for him. Moncrief as well had 10 targets, dropped everything, certainly was aware of his poor performance there. And a Seattle secondary who did look worse. I think those guys could get going. And Juju, obviously, the talent is there. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways you could stack up this Pittsburgh offense and maybe get some value out of it. Juju is going to be chalky, though, now it looks like. Which is kind of
not as chalky as he is in my lineups.
So you are heavying up on the chalk this week. That seems to be the Josh Engelman approach.
I'm trying to play as many of the good guys as I can. I don't have like the 2 Steelers wide receivers that you met, Moncrief and Washington, are not in my player pool.
Okay. I mean, look, the volume I think is there for those guys, and but it will be there for Juju too, and Juju certainly is going to be able to do it. It's hard to ignore 10 targets for Moncrief, and they really did seem like they need him to get involved. Certainly possible that some of those go towards Vance McDonald or somebody like that, because Moncrief, 30% catch rate, not ideal.
That's why I don't want him.
I mean, he's got to regress a little bit. He's not good, but he's not that bad of a player.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I think the opportunity for Washington too, it does speak pretty well that he's like getting 25 targets or air yards per target. That's a very high number for James Washington, and I think he can convert it. But that's me. I think there's a lot of guys in that 3K range who actually I think can convert with the air yards. Like Terry McLaurin, I think is kind of interesting at that price point. There's somebody else who I'm forgetting.
Are you getting paid to say air yards?
No, I love air yards. Air yards is that's the one thing I really look at, which has been the most helpful to me over the last year.
I didn't know if Air Yards was was sponsoring you individually. I don't know if you're going to wear that on your tights before the fight or get that tattooed on you for 10 grand or something.
No, I think you know Josh Hermsmeyer, right? Like the
I mean, I know who he is. I don't look at Air Yards.
Okay, so you don't look at it at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so he has a site called airyards.com. I think he does a really good job. It's a free site. All the data on there is free. It updates pretty fast too. So for me, I was doing my research on Sunday, kind of checking up and see how guys were doing as it went. And I just think it's a sometimes pretty static way to look at things. Like Michael Gallup last year was one of the air yards guys who just getting targeted like 150 yards per game. Didn't convert it because maybe it's a chemistry thing with him and Dak. But we saw how last week that paid off for Gallup. I think that's sort of a thing to look. It's one of those indicators of future performance for football that there aren't many for football that you can kind of pin your hopes to. And I think air yards is one that offers value, but you can disagree.
I'd rather pin it on fantasy points. I don't know the correlation between air yards and fantasy production, and that's the one that I need the most.
Okay, that is fair. Let's see. Spax get 25 cents every time he says air yards. No, that is. I wish I would. $1 would be more reasonable, I would think.
You'd be getting a couple entries in the milli at this rate.
It is a core stat that I look at, and I think there is value to it. But yeah, maybe your approach is right. We'll find out this week. It paid big dividends for you and Adam Thielen last week.
Yeah, look, some guys are obviously wrong regularly.
No, I know. I'm just busting. Yeah, I got to bust your balls back.
No, I don't know. I don't blame you.
Speaking of, any Minnesota pass attack for you?
Not this week. Okay. Makes me a little sad considering I feel like now they'll go crazy. Like I don't want to see them be the reason that it works well this week after being so poor, starting so strong and then ending so poor. But I only have like a very small amount of Diggs and no Thielen this week.
Yeah, it's tough to go there this week, though. I would say if you were going to go there, Thielen getting slightly priced up. And, maybe these offenses are going to score a little more here, but the Vegas total certainly doesn't back that out. And it does seem like these two teams want to kind of play that traditional NFC North style of attack where they're just going to run heavy and try to kill the clock. Both teams played at a really low pace in week one. 37 seconds per snap for Minnesota, 32.2 for Green Bay. Not the ideal offensive spot, even though these teams do have technically talented passers and pass catchers. Let's see. People, YouTube chat is ornery today.
It's 50 guys that have no idea what to say other than air yards. So
hey, air yards. Let's get that money up. Who else are you getting as a stack? Because I feel like there's so many teams on the slate. We talked about some of the main ones. Who else are you feeling the most confident in? How about New England? I guess we should talk about them because Alex mentioned it's sort of tough to rely on these high total games or these teams with a really big runs, or excuse me, a really big total in their favor, because New England just may not be out there for the fourth quarter, even though they do tend to stick it to teams. Maybe they do let up off the gas pedal a bit against their former coach. Who knows? How are you feeling about the Tom Brady stack and these weapons here? Are you getting any of it?
I am. Edelman and Josh Gordon are showing up for me. I have a small amount of Michelle, but that doesn't really have anything to do with Brady. I have, like, Brady's my fourth most owned quarterback, but it's so, especially with Brown in, it's so hard to pick individual Patriots. Is naked Brady a thing? I like him, and I think there are enough options there, but what you're really hoping for is that you get the right guy and he happens to get the concentrated output, because there's like 15 dudes that could score touchdowns. I would roster linemen if I could with Brady, because you just never know. Like, he's just gonna spread the ball out. It's so difficult. But right now, Edelman and Gordon are a part of my life. You gotta figure Josh Gordon beats some goon deep immediately, right?
Yeah, that's been my take on it too. Like, I think they're going to try to get Antonio Brown going. I would assume that's just the spot where you give him his looks and make him feel good coming in. But Gordon, I do think it's impossible to imagine him not getting past the secondary. I mean, they gave up 643 yards last week in Miami, and Gordon getting targeted deep. I won't say the words, but he is getting targeted deep downfield at 15 of whatever that thing is.
So what does that mean? What does that have to do with fantasy production?
So what's the correlation? Okay, if you're going with,
I don't mean that I don't know what air yards are. I'm saying, what does that matter to me in terms of fantasy production?
Because if he's getting targeted 15 yards downfield, and he's also, the yards after the catch, let's not even account for that. If you're getting targeted down the field compared to, like, let's say Darren Waller, who's getting targeted like right at the line of scrimmage, basically, or like Albert Wilson, a guy who's had fantasy production, but basically last week just was targeted straight up at the line of scrimmage over and over again. You're getting a guy who's already getting targeted. Like, not all targets are created equal is how I would view it. And I think for a tournament, especially, like, Josh Gordon would be more in play. Like, yeah, him getting 4 targets last week isn't great, but if his 4 targets are at like 25 air yards per target, like, that's 100 theoretical yards that he could have plus whatever he tacks on with the run game. Whereas if you're getting targeted 4 times for 5 air yards per target, that's 20.
Let's not also forget that the less air yards in your target, the more likely that you're probably to catch that ball. That is each catch being worth 1 point.
No, you're right.
There's a balance there.
So if you look at the numbers from last year, a lot of the guys who had the biggest like GPP type performance and the biggest swings were the guys who had the more 20 plus yard target attempts. So like Tyreek Hill, 2.6, 20 plus targets last year with Pat Mahomes. Like that's sort of like that's why he has those really volatile weeks, because he's getting targeted deep downfield more. I don't know, like it may not be a perfect stat, but I think it's one where you can you get a better read on what a player's actual value is. Because like if you have 12 targets that are close range, like yeah, maybe you catch more. That's certainly value for PPRs. But if you're trying to find the game breaking, the Marquise Browns, the John Rosses, Ross was very highly targeted last week. Like that's where the indicator would be. That's where it would put you on those guys a little bit more.
So that's the thing. I don't want to be on those guys.
Okay, that which is a different approach, but
like I don't want that volatility. I want to know that I'm getting the guys that are going to be involved in the game as much as possible, because there are too many guys to go around.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, it's an ideal mix of both, where you have the guys like I think John Brown is for that reason like appealing, because he's getting a good mix of targets. I think you could make an argument for John Ross. I think he's certainly a bit scarier because he really hasn't had that longitudinal skill set of showing that he can do that over and over again. But if you're getting guys who are getting peppered with targets and also they are deeper downfield, I just think it's the 3-point shot of the NFL. That's where the value is, and that's where you can find these guys. And yeah, they'll fail, but that's what we're doing for GPPs. I think you want the variance, or at least I want the variance.
Mubi just nailed it. The real question is, why not take all the information you have access to? Bingo.
Yeah, I would agree. You guys should do a study on air to DK points. That would be great if we had the time to do that. I would like to know that, but I only know anecdotally what I see. Let's see. All right, let's talk about this New Orleans game with the Rams, because that is certainly one that's going to be high on people's radar this week. One of the highest overall totals on the slate, with over 52 points now, 52.5 according to the site that I pulled from. So a lot of scoring expected here. Certainly some revenge narrative stuff for New Orleans, with a really butthurt NFC Championship situation for them, where they didn't get in because of a poor call on a pass interference play. The Rams also being back at home, a spot where Jared Goff has been better. Todd Gurley, a favorite contrarian running back play, both Alex and Rich Rebar yesterday on the contrary, which I thought was interesting. How are you feeling about, let's talk the Rams side first. How are you feeling about the Rams attack, and are you going to have any exposure to Gurley and the pass attack?
I have a little bit of Gurley on FanDuel. He looks really good on Yahoo, and I want to specifically point that out. Let me just hop over to it quickly. On a site where Saquon Barkley is 40 and Leonard Fournette even is 20, Todd Gurley is $18. No matter how you feel really about his performance in week one and how he's getting, how he's going to be a part of the offense, $18 is simply too cheap. His touchdown props look good. His rushing yard props look good. So on Yahoo specifically, I think it's fantastic from a value standpoint. I have a little bit on FanDuel, a little bit on Fantasydraft, nothing crazy. I find the Rams really difficult to stack in a similar way like the Patriots. They have too many guys.
Yeah, there's not a concentration there, though. In week one, we did see a little more concentration towards Woods and Kupp than Cooks. But as you mentioned, that is sort of that was fungible last year. Cooks had some big games against his former team, New Orleans, too, last year, which I think is certainly not something I would consider in any meaningful way. But it's certainly, you would expect his targets to come up from 6 targets last week, and the Woods and Kupp were at 13 and 10 respectively. I don't know. Goff didn't look great though, but being back home certainly going to help. I would favor Gurley personally for the reasons you mentioned. Like, I don't know that I trust Goff at a ton of volume, but Gurley, the opportunity was there for him, and I think they've kind of made clear they're going to have him in drives in which they matter. And you would think they're going to matter a little more this week versus New Orleans than they would last week versus the Panthers, where they mostly had that game under control. How much Gurley would you be feeling today?
I have 10% on FanDuel. I have him in a little bit more on Yahoo.
Okay, that's a reasonable amount, and I think it has upside too, for sure. And his price is
he's expensive on FanDuel.
Oh, is he? Okay. Yeah, his price on DK is nice. His price, I think, on Fantasydraft is nice. But yeah, overall, I think it's worth some Gurley exposure this week. And at the same time, though, not as much as the other guy, the other running back here on the other side. Alvin Kamara is one of my favorite plays of the week. He's also going to be one of the more popular running back plays, not at Josh Jacobs level, but a little bit behind that. How are you feeling about Kamara, given that he got 20 touches last week? He seems like he's got the lion's share of the backfield, as opposed to last year we had a bit more of a split with Ingram.
Yeah, I have about 20% right now. He's one of those guys where you're just sort of happy to get whatever you can get. He's clearly fantastic. He's involved in every facet of the offense, but you're paying up for it. I just see this as it's a fantastic game, but there's so much offensive talent on both sides of the ball that if you're not going to this game in bulk, it's really hard to get yourself enough exposure to like all of the relevant combinations between. Because if you're going to, let's say, like some sort of Saints stack with Kamara and Thomas, then, like running it back becomes a very costly proposition. You're probably getting a lot of really cheap, like you're probably working in a lot of Raiders in that stack. You're probably going to need Waller and Jacobs in any Rams Saints stack just because of how much talent they have and like the prices of their guys. So I like them, but I don't think they fit naturally. I did get a lot of Cooper Kupp, so I just want to put that out there for FanDuel. It's just sort of a function of it all. Someone had to break free. It ended up being Kupp. I don't have a particular preference for it. If you told me that Robert Woods had 2 touchdowns, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just scared of missing that game. I don't like when there's that much talent.
No, that's a fair take. Also, speaking of that much talent, by the way, we didn't do our 100-yard picks or 100-yard and a TD picks.
I felt so good, man. 10 minutes in, and it was just like, all right, I already got a touchdown. This is going to be cake. And then the Vikings died.
Yeah, that was look, we knew it was a risk going in. That was one of my biggest dug in spots of the week. So I was glad to see that come through. But yeah, you imagine my sweat when I saw that happen. Like, oh fuck.
You had to be freaked, and like however you felt, I felt the opposite because I had a ton of Thielen. He scored immediately. I thought that I was just like dancing in money. And at that point in time, they might as well have took him out.
Yeah, it was like the first minute in the game too. And I'm like, oh no. But then Cook started running and I'm like, wow, okay, I feel good about my Dalvin Cook investment because that he ran like a man. Him and Madison both really like were running and smashing into dudes. I really enjoyed watching that run game, but yeah, Thielen really was an emotional high and emotional low. I saw so many people bragging about it, and it's like, nope, that's his only catch. That's just all he's going to do for the whole game. But last week, yeah, Josh did not get his. EMAC did not get his pick with Chris Carson, and I did get mine with Christian McCaffrey, the great white rhino in the backfield there, doing a good job. Not so good a job against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay shut down defense, really throttled him, which was fun. But Josh, I'll let you go first because I'm pretty sure you won't pick a guy who I'm going to pick.
No, go for it. I want to know if you're going to like John Brown or something.
You know what? I was actually thinking Alvin Kamara, but you're right. I'm going to go John Brown.
Whew, okay. I'm really excited that I talked you into that one.
I'm excited too because I'm going to be 2-0 on the week, or I'm going to have my second one.
That's fair. I'll take Alvin Kamara.
Okay, that hurts. That's going to hurt a little bit. It's like impossible he doesn't get there, I would say. So good for you. You're going to have your first one this week. I'm proud of you.
That was the most obvious thing I've ever done in my entire life.
I agree with it. I still think I'll be able to get it with John Brown. If I don't, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have a real tilting week if John Brown doesn't get there. So it's fine. I'm backing it with my pocketbook.
I would have never done that, by the way. Like I wouldn't have. You were right. I wouldn't have taken Kamara.
No, I didn't think you would, but like I think he's in a great spot. He's a great pick. He's going to get the passing.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it.
Which, of course, if you guys are just following along, we did change the rules this year. So it's 100 all-purpose yards plus a touchdown is what we're now targeting for our, not just 100 yards straight away of one category. Wanted to make sure we could get some more players in the mix. So a guy who's got a heavy touch load like Alvin Kamara going to be great. And a guy who's got a lot of air yards and targets like John Brown also going to be equally great. I think we can all agree there.
EMAC took Juju.
Oh, another good pick. All right.
Juju on that beat.
A better pick than Chris Carson last week. Chris Carson, that Cincinnati run defense did look pretty good.
Not as good of a pick as Alvin Kamara this week, however.
Nope, certainly not. Certainly not. Even Michael Thomas, I think you can make a pretty good case for in that spot too. But
I mean, he's probably going to get 20 targets. Dude's fantastic.
Probably is. I feel like I don't have enough Kamara and Thomas together, even though like I do have some with Breeze. I feel like I should just kind of have them with my other guys because it's hard to see those guys not having monster days both.
Man, that was taking Kamara there was really fun. It's oddly satisfying.
Look, I teed it up for you, and you talked me. I have to back the guys that I'm backing, and I'm certainly backing Kamara a lot. But John Brown is. Look, if I'm right about this one, I'll feel really good about myself, and that's what we're hoping for. Let's see. That's just Emacs tag. All right. Let's check here. Checking for questions too. See if there's anything interesting here in the chats. Maybe Saquon. Saquon's interesting. I think that's certainly one of the guys I'm running back my much Buffalo with.
I don't have much here on Saquon. Well, I mean, I guess I do on Fantasy Draft. I don't really anywhere else. He's expensive. He's just really expensive.
And Buffalo's run defense is good, but Rich Rebar yesterday, again, on the contrary, pointed out the Giants' offensive line was actually really good at run blocking in week 1. They were 83 graded in run blocking. And then they also were just getting a ton of yards versus the Cowboys, who not a great run defense by any stretch. And Buffalo's maybe better, but I think it could be a good Saquon bounce back spot where people maybe off him a little bit because of the lack of touches he had in week 1. And I don't know where else you go when you don't have Sterling Shepard and you just need to score some points.
I mean, when push comes to shove, it's not like anybody is against Saquon Barkley. We're all against Eli Manning.
Yes.
So that's what just becomes tricky. It's how confident are you in Eli Manning not being a cadaver for 60 minutes? And they don't really have anything behind him, obviously, that could save the day. Gardner Minshew stretching in the pregame locker room and nothing but a jockstrap. This dude is the man. You listen to that Simmons podcast with Mallory Rubin? You know that he's what Gardner Minshew the whatever, but there aren't people before him.
Yeah, that's right, because his dad is named like a different name. I don't know. I don't like how Bill Simmons calls him G Minshew. Like I think he thinks that's funny. It's not like I don't know why he's doing that, but
I don't think he knew who he was. It's really as easy as it gets. But yeah, apparently this guy is out of his mind. Mallory Rubin talking about carrying around like Crown bottles in his waistband on campus last year. It's fantastic.
He does seem, I mean, just visually, he looks like a 70s throwback QB type. I mean, with the mustache, he kind of has like that Kenny Stabler look to him, which very much before my time, but I don't even know why I know what Kenny Stabler looks like.
Yeah, how many people in our YouTube chat know what Kenny Stabler looks like?
Probably is going to be like a couple of the older guys will be like, yeah, of course, Kenny Stabler, one of the GOATs. But yeah, I don't know. He's got a throwback vibe to him. I think he's got a little gunslinger to him. The thing though with him, I thought he might be an intriguing play a little bit, but we have the Texans defense is actually projected to be one of Osmo's best ones on the week in terms of points and value. And a rookie on the road against the Texans defense who did look kind of worse without Jadeveon Clowney out there last week. They were certainly getting carved up by New Orleans, but that's New Orleans.
Shocked.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be intrigued by Minshew here at 4,800 on DK. That's a nice little price for him, and he did throw it not very deep, only 5.5 air yards per target for G Minshew in week 1.
He, I mean, like I'm not surprised. I guess he's supposed to just be like an accurate dude running a spread offense, but I'm good. I'm intrigued by him. Like I'm interested to see how he plays. He's not fantasy viable.
No, he was very accurate, which I think is certainly a positive. And he did throw a couple deep passes, but I don't want to go to a dink and dunk guy with a very low total. But he could certainly be a cult hero though. Like he certainly is one of those guys who checks all my boxes in terms of being somebody who I'll want to play at some point this year.
I just like that he's evidently crazier than anybody in the league, just doing all sorts of weird shit, having names where he's not. Where like don't make sense. It's fantastic.
In this game, by the way, Leonard Fournette, we had a lot of love for him last week, a guy who projected well, obviously didn't come through with the game script, not helping out too much for him. He's still at a reasonable price, and he's not going to be his own this week. Any interest in Fournette for you at all?
Yeah, I'm doing it again.
He looked good.
Look, he's got the second best touchdown prop in the game, only behind DeAndre Hopkins, which, let's be clear here, shouldn't be shocking. His rushing yards props, I think, are really reasonable, 65.5 yards. You don't see people getting like monstrous projections in that spot. So I immediately, when I saw my exposure, which is 2x the field, I was like, damn, we're doing this shit again. So I had to dig into it a little bit. And I think it's reasonable, and I can't let last week fully cloud me. But if he eats a bag of them again this week, I might have to reevaluate. But I'm right back there. Again, I have him a lot again on Yahoo. I assume, I have him quite a bit on Fantasy Draft as well.
And he still had 6 targets too, which is more pass game involvement for him. I mean, he's still not going to be a trailing kind of game script positive player where you're not going to be expecting him to really be racking up those short passes and getting value if the game does blow out and does favor Houston, which certainly possible that Houston passing attack looking really, really good so far. But yeah, I think Fournette makes sense to have exposure. I don't have as much because he's at that price point with Eckler. And after what Eckler did to me last week and not having enough of him, I just went to Eckler. But Fournette, certainly a viable pivot there. And I think he's going to have better weeks. Like, he looked fresh. He looked good. He was trying out there. I think that's sort of all you can hope for him. And this Minshew thing, I think having a kind of cult figure out there at quarterback can probably give them some juju, or not Juju Smith-Schuster, give them some positive vibes that they probably didn't have in general.
I would rather they had Nick Foles out there, if I'm being honest.
I would too. Foles looked good before he cracked his clavicle. Like, he was throwing deep. That play that he cracked his clavicle on, he threw a deep pass, like a strike to Chark under pressure. Kind of sad that they're not going to get him for the full season. Maybe back later in the year. Yeah,
considering I had like 15% Foles, I was happy with the start of the game and less than happy when he was immediately removed.
You're telling me I had I was way over the field on Watkins. So many of my Watkins lineups were ones with Foles at quarterback and then with like Fournette. So it was just that was painful, but obviously not as painful as a cracked clavicle. So you gotta weigh that.
It depends. If I'm a millionaire, I could deal with a cracked clavicle a little bit better.
That's a good point. I would, if I had won the Milli Maker and somebody were like, by the way, if you win the Milli Maker this week, I'm going to shatter your clavicle with a bat, and be like, all right. What are you going to do? That's life.
As long as I can prepare for it, I'm fine. I'd take like a couple Percocet or something first.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Even if I didn't, if they were just like no painkillers, I'd be like, the Milli, like, pain fades, glory lasts forever, as the great Shane Falco once said.
Dude, I keep pasting my lineups into my Fanduel CSV. Can't figure out why in the hell nothing's uploading. Probably because you can't paste other sites' lineups into your shit.
That is a core part of DFS. We're learning so much today about wanting to make money and also putting your lineups in correctly. Those are the fundamental parts of DFS people often forget. How about the other side of this Houston game? Because DeAndre Hopkins, certainly a great player who really showed how great he was again last week in the Monday night opener versus New Orleans. Not the highest owned guy, a pivot to Michael Thomas. I prefer Michael Thomas because of that game and how that should shake out. But Hopkins is interesting, even though he's going to be probably getting a lot of Jalen Ramsey today. How are you feeling about him?
Apparently not good.
Okay.
He's like the stud guy this week that I don't have.
Yeah,
I don't have anything to back it up. It's just shaking out that way. I'm finding better values at better price tags elsewhere. It's very clearly the piece of my lineups that I'm most concerned with because he's DeAndre Hopkins. I think he very well could be the best wide receiver in the league. He is 9,000 on FanDuel. That's the most expensive wideout. Michael Thomas is 8,500. Juju is 8,100. I just have a hard time paying more for him than those guys in these spots today.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the defense, too, is going to be a little tougher on him. I think Will Fuller was an interesting play, though, at his price point, under 5% ownership. A very big play guy. And I think we know his stats, so he's going to be getting out there rather. Whereas with Kiki Kuti and Kenny Stills both in the mix for that wide receiver 3 role, I think that's a little bit tougher. But I wouldn't surprise me to see like a big Fuller day here, just knowing how Hopkins is going to be the focal point of that defense.
I wouldn't be mad if Fuller got a TD. I know that I have him in one lineup on Yahoo.
Yeah, he's he kind of fits the profile of what Watkins did, a big yard after catch guy who's got kind of the size and the speed. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he has a monster day here. And I'm above the field on him too. Didn't get a ton of him because there's a lot of guys that 5K range too. Like we talked about Josh Gordon. I think Fuller is pretty good. A little bit cheaper for John Ross, who's a guy who I think can be worth some exposure again, just given the target load he had in week 1. It's a very reasonably priced week. I feel like for all pretty much across the board.
Bernie or Guillotine 2020 in YouTube chat said, people make me laugh with Milli Maker and playing all the chalk. The only way to win is to make 1 to 2 absolutely insane 0.6% owned guys and get lucky with long TDs. The problem isn't playing the chalk. The problem is playing the Milli Maker. You could look at all the data for the past 3 years and see that, 95% of the pros that play the Milli Maker don't do a very good job because it's an incredibly difficult contest to be playing in. What should make you laugh is the fact that people continue to play it every week. It's arguably the worst contest in sports. So,
But
But
you get
meanwhile,
$1 million.
two no rake contests today are going to overlay by 20%. And people are going to jam into a contest that all of the pros are basically showing is a negative EV short-term contest.
Yeah, I agree. I think to me, it's more of like the lottery ticket one to round out my lineups. And then, but the money is much better spent on, as you mentioned, on fantasy drafts, a big Hooters tournament or some of the Yahoo no management fee ones up top, $1 million baller. Like that's just more logical to go there. Cause you mentioned it last week, like basically the second the tournament's locked, you were making money.
Yeah,
Tends to be a positive.
It's the worst contest in the industry to enter, and people think that it's the best.
It's the most fun because I think you get the fantasy part of it, but that's why it's a lottery ticket. Basically, you're just buying a $20 lottery ticket.
How about go enter the Yahoo tournament and the fantasy draft tournament, and then go buy a Powerball ticket?
Yeah,
those are $1.
This is just wrong. You play all the Josh Allen you want, but you aren't winning the Milli unless you pair him with a couple insane low-owned picks that get extreme outlier variance.
That's wrong.
I don't think. Yeah, that's not true because you could actually make it more chalky because Allen's not going to be that highly owned.
Look. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is you need to pick 8 guys that all score 20 points and make sure that your defense probably scored a touchdown. To thread that needle, you just need to hit what amounts to the nuts and still be near that salary. It's a massive, massive tournament.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in there and a lot of sharp people and a lot of, the random lucky people too, who just are going to get, just going to get like But like there was the famous one, I feel like the Fanduel commercial where the guy played like all Pittsburgh players and he won the $1 million. It's like, I played only guys who were Steelers and guys who went to Pittsburgh and I won. It's like, you can't fucking prepare for that. That's not how that goes.
Here, I talk about this a lot. My 53rd ranked lineup in just ownership has a product of 1 in 77 million. You need one. You don't need to go bonkers crazy. You just need to be right. Ownership is not going to matter all that much in that contest. It's not a showdown, Millie.
Yeah, I agree. I think people too with the NFL, for some reason, people tend to overthink it a little bit. I mean, it's much like with baseball, where we talk about you could have the popular stack, but you have to have a pitcher who's a little bit lower owned, or your lesser stack who's a little bit lower owned, and it's the same thing for NFL, where like people, I think, get a little too cute with the chalk stuff. Where it's, I wouldn't say it's better to play chalk, but you can certainly get away with a lot more in the NFL.
Yeah, a guy being 20% owned isn't chalk. He's highly owned relative to the rest of the people, but it's not chalk. It's not like the NBA where you can get, 5K Harrison Barnes. That's a bad example. 5K so and so who's going to play 34 minutes and he's 90% owned. That's chalk.
Yeah, Kevin Z pointing out last year an all Bears lineup won. Yeah, I mean, that stuff, those are not positive EV plays generally, but that's what happens in the Milli Maker.
So right now, Fantasy Drafts Hooters Million at 78% full with 5 minutes to go. Yahoo and their $1 million baller at 39,000 of 50,000 entries. So they're going to overlay 10K in entries again, and 20% of the entire player pool, of the entire pool on Fantasy Draft. Just start putting in more lineups. Find the money. Borrow it from a friend. Do something. You're getting an interest-free loan.
Yeah, go right now to Fantasy Draft and use that promo code OSMO to make sure you get your free 7-day trial there and your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. So there is no downside to going over there right now to Fantasy Draft. And again, you get to support Hooters and get Alex made some fun Hooters jokes, and on the contrary, that made me happy. I'm glad we're integrating them so well. I hope they come over as a sponsor too. That would bring me so much joy. But defense question here, which I think is pretty interesting.
Do you say that you hope that Hooters becomes one of our sponsors?
Yes, I think the way we've really done a good job promoting them and Fantasy Draft equally, I would say.
Well, I want to add more entries to Fantasy. I can't do that while I'm on the show.
Yeah, not enough time, I think.
I mean, I have them ready. It would just be a copy paste, but I gotta deposit more.
I lost the guy's question. I think it was Aaron. Somebody was asking, but I think this is a good question for people right now. We're probably finishing up their lineups. We don't talk much defense on here because it's so fungible and can go in a variety of different ways. Oh, here you go. Aaron Wernham asking Ravens or Pats defense. Obviously, those are the higher priced ones, but two defenses that are in a nice spot based on Vegas totals and also just going against teams who should give up the ball a decent amount. Which of those would you prefer? And I guess who are you getting the most of defense-wise this week?
I have them relatively equally, Pats and Ravens, but they are like 6th and 7th for me. Giants, Steelers, Colts, Cardinals are my 4 most owned defenses.
I just made a real face when you said Giants.
Sure
I feel
did.
betrayed. But yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense with the Josh Allen ownership. It just hurts. Just hurts to hear it. I would favor the Pats just because I think they are a really good defense. I think the Ravens are a really good defense too, but it wouldn't surprise me if Kyler Murray and that Arizona offense, just with the pace they have, they are playing at a 21-second pace, which is outlandish. That is 5.8 seconds faster than the Rams were last year as the fastest paced team in the league. So Arizona is going to be playing a lot of offense, and even though the Ravens will have the ball a lot, I just think having that many shots at doing something is a little bit riskier, even though it also gives up more shots to get a takeaway. I just think I would favor the Pats to feel a little safer with the same amount of upside.
Wait, hold on. You don't like the Ravens because of the speed of the Cardinals?
No. I think it just splitting the difference between the two, I think would be like, I think they're more inclined to put up points, but obviously, yes, they are more inclined to also score some more points and get a takeaway and all that. But I just feel like the Patriots game, like they're going to squeeze the air out of the ball and they're going to damage Miami every time. I feel like that just feels safer.
I mean, yeah, that one certainly feels safer. I like the idea of getting a defense against a speedy offense. Not like they're fast, but like running a lot of plays is better because it gives you more opportunities for interceptions and ultimately pick sixes or dropbacks in general.
I agree.
But I have those teams equally, so it really doesn't matter. Just go Giants.
Yeah, fuck that. I just think that the Cardinals have a chance to put up some offense here. Like, I think the Ravens are good, but they're just going to get so many at bats, so to speak, that I think they have a chance to do something here. And if they don't turn it over, it wouldn't shock me if Arizona puts up a little more points than Miami does, because Miami is just going to be overmatched.
You would think.
If they're not, I mean, Miami has played New England close over the years, so maybe that'll be it. Somebody was touting a Devontae Parker in Miami D. Nope. No, do not do that. Devontae Parker is fine. Miami D, that seems not the best idea.
No, that's a tough sell for me. Actually, as I say that, I'm sure I have them. Yeah, I do.
Let's see. What do you think about the Broncos D on DraftKings? I have a little bit of them, actually. They're an interesting play. Obviously, Mitch Trubisky, we saw his struggles there. I do think Chicago bounces back. I really didn't like what I saw from Denver's defense last week. They should get better, one would hope, but they did not pressure Oakland at all. And that could be the Oakland offensive line being a little better and just having been together for a while. But yeah, I think it's a bounce back spot for Trubisky, but I'm not playing him.
Neither am I.
Yeah. Let's see. Trubisky is the new Cutler. Trubisky won a lot of millionaire makers last year. I feel like he was one of the QBs who ended up on the top of the most, I think.
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean.
Just means he has the upside and not much ownership. So I don't know. That's never the case of Jay Cutler, though.
Big fan of Jay Cutler on Very Cavallari.
I don't watch that show, but I've heard a lot from a few friends who do. And apparently Jay Cutler, a cult icon for a lot of women out there now.
Yeah, my wife watches it a lot. I don't watch it, but anytime that Jay Cutler is in a scene, I will stop and pay attention to it because he's living a good life right about now.
Oh, sorry.
I was just like, I'm a little busy today. I got to work on my duck call.
Your boy Terry Wilson had a question here, which is, we are locked now, so maybe this won't be helpful, but he wanted to know who is your top raw points QB, and I know Terry Wilson is your go-to guy in the YouTube chat.
Terry, my top raw points quarterback is whoever Alex has as his top raw points quarterback. I use our stuff on the site. So Pat Mahomes, if it's not, it's obviously Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, it's got to be Pat Mahomes in terms of raw points.
Oh, week 2, let's go.
All right, we are locked. So let's go see Adam Thielen score a touchdown within 1 minute once again and ruin everything. But guys, please hit that like button before you go. And of course, go check out our sponsor, Fantasydraft. If you did not get in that tournament today, it's a bad move by you because there's a lot of overlay, a lot of chances for you to make money, but there's going to be even more for you at Fantasydraft. So go right now to fantasydraft.com and use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, to win, to get your free 7-day trial and get your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. And of course, we'll have a lot of data updated for the afternoon slate, as well as the showdown slate later on. We will have that live before lock show coming up with EMAC and other Eric. So go check that out. We are doing live before locks for all the showdown slates, and those guys will take you home a little bit later today. Make sure to go, though, to awesemo.com/join to check out all those packages, because if you're tilting from the early slate, you're tilting from your results early on, just get in there now, get all the data you need to help get better lineups in for the afternoon slate and the showdown. And Awesemo's projections and the ownership will help you out quite a bit with that. Josh, any parting words for the folks before we go win so much money on Josh Allen?
Yes. $20 in play on an entry on Yahoo, currently winning $24.70. That's a 23% increase on your money without having to do anything at all.
That's
understand
helpful.
what I'm saying to you guys. Listen to me. You are making money just by simply being in the contest. They overlaid 10,000 entries on a contest that has no rake whatsoever. Play these things. Fantasy draft is the same thing. If you're next week, if they're running these contests again, please get in them to benefit yourself. Ignore any other advice you get in the industry about football. If they're telling you anything other than play those contests, they're lying to you.
Yeah. Go to airyards.com and then go to fantasydraft.com and have yourself a day. That's how we do it.
Right? What we got? Hit that like button.
Yeah, hit that like button, guys. We'll see you guys again soon. Good luck. Enjoy week 2.